And I want you to know one thing, which is so important, that age makes no difference. No difference.
Hey friends, welcome back to This Beautiful Brain, where we talk about ways to have a healthier brain and a better quality of life. What you're about to watch is an interview between myself and the incredible Sylvia Manheim and her longtime friend, Larry Jacobson. Sylvia is 98 years old, nearing a century, and we get to learn lessons from her life and how to age well. What she learned from her early influences of growing up in the Bronx, how being accused of being a communist impacted her entire family, how she impacted her children, including the Emmy Award-winning Camryn Manheim of Law and Order fame, and numerous secrets to aging well.
So my secret to my children and to everybody.
We talk about aging with purpose and transformative life experiences.
It was one of my best experiences in my life going up there, really. Each of us in our own way have little experiences that were really pivotal in our lives.
She schools us on out-of-the-box thinking and dealing with rejection. And do you ever get rejected?
Yes, and it's fine.
And we can take away things that Sylvia believes are truly important to live a great life.
That is so important.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what made me who I am today.
Overall, Sylvia is just an incredibly interesting and inspirational person with so many life stories and things to share with us. I hope that you enjoy this interview as much as I did. Let's go. So here we are in Sylvia's beautiful Washington home. And it really is glorious, Sylvia. Thank you so much for having us. I'm joined by Larry Jacobson. He is Sylvia's longtime friend and has been working in the field of elder care advocacy and healthcare for years.
I'm thrilled to be here with you, Sylvia.
It's a pleasure to have both of you in my home.
Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely.
And so it's going to be an interesting conversation talking about aging with flair. How about that? Aging with flair.
Yeah, I called it the secrets of joyful aging.
That's a good name. But it's aging with a purpose and a determination to keeping yourself involved, being useful, and make a contribution to the world as old as you are.
I think of you as a force of nature because you're so driven to give back to the world in so many ways. And that to me, that's so much of what makes you special.
Because I've gotten so much from the world that it's really wonderful for me to give back just a little piece, because I've been so fortunate with friends like yourself, with my incredibly wonderful family, and my background with my parents and my grandparents and where I grew up. That gave me the purpose and the understanding of what life is all about.
And that's a perfect segue. Sylvia, you were the child of Jewish immigrants?
Yes.
From Russia and Poland, is that right?
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about how they came to the country and how that evolved.
Well, they came because of discrimination of Jews in Russia and Poland. And they came versus a ship. And I remember my mother and father telling me that they were on the bottom of the ship because it was the cheapest way to get here, and they had no money. And they landed and they went to the Lower East Side in New York, where they lived in tenement buildings with other immigrants from various countries on Europe and Estonia, Russia, and all those places. And then they decided many years later that they wanted to move out of that facility, out of the Lower East Side, into what they called, where the country was, which was called the Bronx. So many of the immigrants moved up to the Bronx.
All right, and just so that all of our viewers have a sense of what it was like in tenement living, can you give us a sense of that, of what the conditions were like for them?
Well, I didn't live there. It's my parents. Well, they lived in apartment buildings that were 5 stories, no elevator, dark stairways, no bathrooms in the apartments. There was a toilet in the hall. There was a bathtub, I remember, in the kitchen. and where everybody took their baths. And from the kitchen, you walked into a bedroom, no windows, another bedroom, no windows, and the living room was at the very, very end where there were windows, with very little money. And they had push carts where they were selling things in push carts. And my father, who knew how to sew, got a job on a sewing machine, and he would sew for 13 hours a day just to make a bare living. There were no unions, and later on my father was one of the people that started the Military Workers Union.
And is that how your folks moved to the Bronx, because they thought it was a better situation than it was in Lower Manhattan?
Oh, because they heard there was a cooperative being built in the Bronx where they could buy an apartment for $100, and they saved up enough money to buy an apartment for $100, and it was called the Workers' Cooperative Colony. And they moved there, when I was a year and a half old, and I left there when I was 18, when I met my husband, and then we moved to Illinois.
So that really shaped your formative years,
And
that
it
experience.
shaped my formative years, because most of the people that lived there were working class people and immigrants, and most of them worked in the garment industry, which was not unionized. And they all went on strike and they fought for unions. And my father made hats, and he formed the Military Workers Union. Yes, he did.
So just a foundational aspect of workers' rights and supporting unions and really making change for the people who came here and needed that.
So I was born with that from the time I was a little girl and my brother was a little boy. Mm-hmm. That's how we lived, with union people all around us.
And you talked a little bit about your experience as a child and attending different events and rallies that were really meaningful for you. Can you say a little bit about that?
Well, I attended what they call May Day parades, where workers from all over the state would come to 42nd Street and march. And when I was a little girl, my father would put me on his shoulder, and we went under, his local was Local 840, and I remember the big sign behind him. And he marched with such pride. And at that time, there were about 100,000 people marching down on 42nd Street, singing a song called Solidarity Forever, and the union makes us strong. Do you know that song, Larry?
I've heard it, yeah, it's great.
Solidarity forever, and the union makes us strong.
All right, that's just beautiful. It really is.
Just remember that. It's amazing at my age that I still, because it was so powerful in my life.
The aspect of when people lived in the coop, in the cooperative housing, I think there was an aspect where many of them were considered to be communists. And I know at times you've been accused of being a communist, and I wanted to get your perspective on communism versus socialism, and just exactly that face that you're making, so that all of our viewers can understand the reality of what you went through and being kind of unjustly accused of certain things that didn't fit for you, but stereotyped into them, and really speaking out against that and making a difference.
Well, most of the people that I grew up with really not members of the Communist Party, but people call them communists. They were members of the Socialist Party, most of them. And the majority of these people were people who worked in factories. They were working class people. And what they felt that socialism would do for them would bring them a living wage, decent working conditions, decent holidays, decent pensions. And this is what really they had hoped that they would get under a socialist society.
Yes, absolutely. And when you and your husband were accused of being communists, can you talk a little bit about that experience and what that did?
Well, it was a terrible time in our lives. It's because when I was a young girl, I must have been 18, 17, not quite, I got a job as a switchboard operator for the Communist Party at 35 East 12th Street downtown in New York City. And because of my working there for 6 months, my husband was was thrown out of his job because they felt, the government felt, that because he was married to me, that I personally was going to overthrow the government and bring in a communist government. So he lost his job, and for 5 years, even though he had a PhD in mathematics, he could not work. It was really a terrible thing. But we won our case, and then Jerry, my husband, was able to get the first time a full-time job. So it was very complicated and very difficult. But anyway, what came of that, which you'll find interesting, is that the New Yorker magazine wrote an article about us called Picking Up the Pieces by Daniel Lang, and you could find that. And then CBS bought it and did a live documentary. And we have that live documentary.
Oh,
And I'll show it to you sometime.
incredible.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I don't think I've ever seen it.
I have it. I have it.
And thank goodness that they documented this, that they took the actuality of what happened and made a concrete representation of
did.
the injustices and
They did.
the travesty of what happened to your family.
And that's why our documentary is so important, because it shows the injustice that took place against Jerry and myself, which was absolutely ludicrous.
You are just a representative of, you know, how to work with that and how to give people hope that we can overcome.
When you look at the world and you look what happened to Jerry and myself, we overcame all that, and look where we're living today in America.
Yeah. And that's the focus of the interview with you, Sylvia, is these episodes of overcoming adversity and not just being content, oh, life is good enough, but always looking for more.
Oh, no. I still am out there in the front lines, helping people, going on marches, talking, writing letters. I'm still doing that today, because if it happened to me, it could happen to other people as well. And it is happening to other people as well. So we're out there, not only me, but my entire family are out there trying to make this a better world.
So Sylvia, you were telling us a little bit about this illustrious professional life that you've had and so many of the things that you've done.
Well, I got my degree in education, and we moved to Northern Michigan University, where I taught Indians, American Indians who lived on reservations, who were functionally illiterate, because my basic area of expertise was reading. And I taught people how to read who could not read well. And so I went out to where they lived, and I set up reading groups and taught them how to read. And that was, I got a grant from the Office of Economic Opportunity, because I felt that they would be more comfortable in bars, because that's where they would go drinking, and that's where they felt like men. So I made a deal with 3 bars in Marquette, Michigan, that I could rent them in the mornings from 9 to 12, and hire 2 teachers besides myself, so they could start reading with things that they knew, like ginger ale, vodka, because they knew it by configuration. And then we would walk the streets. They knew restaurant, they knew the words on the street. And from that situation, I taught them how to read, because they could get jobs in Flint, Michigan at that time. There were no jobs in the Upper Peninsula, but there were jobs in Flint, and they needed to know how to fill out applications. So I taught them how to do that. And once they could fill out an application, they were able to go to Flint, Michigan and get a job. So it was a very successful, and was called System for Success, written up in all the newspapers, that I was able to do that. I had 80 men that were able to learn how to read, to go there and get their jobs. So that, and then I went into the prisons, and I did the same thing with prisoners who were illiterate. And most prisoners who were illiterate started to steal when they were young. But once they could get an education, things changed.
You know, so many people go into a situation and say, a school and learning, you have to come to me and you have to sit in the classroom and you have to learn a certain way. And you were so creative in terms of conceptualizing where people are at and how to bring learning to them.
To the bars.
Absolutely, in a context that actually worked for them.
In a really practical way that they could relate to.
You know, and it just highlights for me how you used your brain differently than a lot of people might. That your creativity was coming through whenever you had a new challenge, rather than bringing the same old paradigm to it, that you really thought out of the box for things that would work.
Well, I went to the reservations and I saw the conditions. And then I met a family who were totally illiterate. So I would bring them to my home in the evening and teach them how to read. And I would go shopping with them also to teach them that they should look at it was an amazing experience for me living in the Upper Peninsula, because it was learning for me to work with people that had no money whatsoever, no money, absolute poverty. So it taught me a lesson about the human condition, about what to do with money and how people use it. And I would sit and talk with them about it. So it was one of my best experiences in my life going up there, really. Each of us in our own way have little experiences that were really pivotal in our lives. Meeting one person in a supermarket or somebody on the street that you say something nice to can change somebody's life. I believe that. And I want you to know one thing, which is so important, that age makes no difference. No difference.
Oh, please say more. This is a beautiful point, please.
No, really, because people will say, who is one of your best? I said, Larry Jacobson. Well, is he your age? I said, no, he's the age of my son. How could he be? I said, it's ridiculous for you to ask me a question like that. Why are you asking such a question? Age makes no difference. It's a relationship, it's a personality, it's an ideology. That's what makes the difference.
Yes.
And respect. I have so much respect for Sylvia, and over the years, I think she has maybe a little bit for me.
And I was there when his daughter was born.
Oh, okay. So I just need to, highlight this idea that I've heard you say so many times, and I haven't known you that long, but this idea of social connections and relationships. And this is what you're highlighting, that it doesn't matter the age, it doesn't matter who you're talking to, or if it's somebody in the grocery store that you're meeting for the first time, but that connection is so important. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, you talk about connections. When I go to a supermarket, I see somebody that looks outstanding to me, or something special, whatever, a man, woman, I'll go over and I'll say, you look so lovely today. And that person will look at me and say, oh my God, well, thank you. It's so nice to do that to a human being. I have a bench, I have one here too, in front of my house. And I sit on my bench, and people walk by and I'll say, stop for a minute, just stop for a second. Don't rush. Where are you going? What do you do? What's your name? And we have a conversation. And it's just lovely to meet a stranger and just sit down and talk to a stranger. Everybody's in such a rush all the time.
But people really appreciate when you recognize
And they do.
them.
Yes.
They do. As a little girl, it was part of me. I would stop with them. I'd walk with my mother on the street, and I'd say, oh, Mrs. Goldberg, you look so pretty today. I must have been 11. My mother would say, why do you do that? I said, Mom, because she does look lovely today.
Yes, it was just real. It just came from within you.
Right.
I might hazard to say that this might be one of those secrets that we're talking about today, of why you've done so well in terms of being kind of a super ager and being so cognitively fluent and sharp and active and engaged, that one of these secrets is your sociability.
Not to be afraid to talk to a stranger. Not at all. People are people, and people like to be complimented, and people like to be noticed. Not everybody, but most people like to be noticed in a productive, positive way.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, that's what I taught my students. Always say nice things to people.
So in addition to these amazing things you've already said about your work, I know you've done some other things in healthcare. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I had a friend who was a nurse. Her name was Lynn Perlman. And she said there's a job available at Memorial. They got a new grant for a health educator for a breast center. I said, I know nothing about anything about healthcare, not a thing. She said, why don't you do me a favor? There's going to be an interview. It's called a mass interview. I said, I don't really want you to do me a favor. Go down and just participate in the interview. So I went very reluctantly. And everybody got up and whatever. And then it came to me. And I said, my name is Sylvia Manheim. And I feel, and I'm a very satisfactory person. I know nothing about what you're talking about. But as a health educator, I would ask people questions as to what bothers them, what they would like to see for their life, what they would like to see for the future, what they would like to see for the government to help them with. But other than that, I can't make any more contributions because I'm not in health education. But if I were in health education, I would do something differently. I would call up the heads of organizations and I would ask them what they would like to see for their women employees. That's all. So the next day I get a phone call from the chief nurse at Memorial saying that I'm a contender for the job. I said, I can't believe this. She said, no, you are one of the contenders. Would you come down for another interview? So I came down. It was a personal interview with her. Her name was I'll never forget it, Claudia Jones. So I came down for another interview. And we had a I thought a simple interview. And then she called me the next day and she said, you got the job. I said, I know nothing about running an organization on a breast. It was going to be a breast center. She said, you could do it. I was going to have a nurse, and I was going to be the person that gets the women in. So the first thing I did, because I knew nothing about anything, where are there a lot of women? The telephone company. So I called the head of the telephone company in Long Beach, and I said, we're setting up a new division here at Memorial. We're going to do breast self-examinations. We're going to bring nurses to your building. Could you give us the time and the date? And she was thrilled. That's how it began.
A case study in a brand new area for you. You have no interest, no inclination, no nothing. And somebody says, hey, here's an opportunity. And instead of flat out just rejecting it like most of the population would, you say, fine, I'll show up and be myself. And you bring yourself and are the outstanding candidate.
And we examined 25,000 women. And now we have a building, a breast cancer building. So that worked out well. And then from there, you won't believe it. So a group of us, did you know Jack Pletcher?
Yeah.
And myself and my friend Lynn Perlman. So one day we were sitting in my backyard. I said, what are we going to do? So I said, let's start a school. A school? I said, why not? Let's start a school. How are you going to do that? I said, let's go to see the president of the university. So we went to see the president of the university. I said, we want to start a school. He said, that's a really good idea. Do some research. See if there are other schools and other universities. And so we looked that up because we didn't know, and we found there were two. One at UCLA, one at Northridge. So we went to UCLA and to Northridge and found out about it. Went back to the president. He said, okay, start it.
It was focused on seniors, right?
Only seniors. So it's now 26 years old. We have 2,000 seniors. 70 classes.
Cooked up in your backyard.
So my secret to my children and to everybody, if you have an idea, go for it. Even though it doesn't work, you learn from your experiences. Go for it. Go for it. If you're not successful, you learn something from that anyway.
So at the beginning of the pandemic, I was doing elder care advocacy, seeing all seniors one-on-one. But at the beginning of the pandemic, everything shut down. So I'm thinking to myself, I had just moved to Portland. I didn't know very many people. Now I can't do what I came to do business-wise. What am I going to do? And I did exactly what you just suggested. I thought, how could we reach people online? So that way they wouldn't worry about COVID and getting sick or anything like that. And we'd been doing some things on Zoom before, so we just said, let's expand that. Let's take the movement practice, gentle movement, anybody could do. Sylvia was doing it at 95 years old, pretty good. and let's do some meditation, some guided meditation, and some silent meditation. And then let's add a support group so people have a chance to speak on anything that's going on.
So the social aspect that you're building.
Well, and during the pandemic, people were freaking out, right? So they needed a place to speak up. And it was the same thing. It was just an idea. I just combined it with a little bit of my past experience and said, let's take that to the next level. And we call it the practice of health, because we wanted people to have the idea that it was a practice that you had to do on a regular basis. It wasn't you just come there once or give a magic bullet. You have to be willing to practice it, to show up on a regular basis. But we did 40 sessions over 2 years, and we developed a little online community. Now it turns out that the pandemic is winding down. Now people want to do it in person, face to face. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to do much of the same kind of thing with people in person, and just help them come together as a community, support each other, healthy practices through movement and meditation, and see where it goes.
So the practice of health almost sounds like it's based in part on Sylvia's actual life, of the things that she was doing, and taking some of those principles and putting it into a package for people.
What we do at OLLI now is all over the state.
And OLLI was the university that you started, the school that you started.
Yeah, it's all, I didn't, it would have started anyway. It was time. There are things that are timing. It was time. And so it's at many different universities,
Absolutely. So Sylvia, in addition to activism, to professional work and contributing in so many ways, you've also fostered a beautiful family. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, my husband, Jerry, had a PhD in mathematics and philosophy, and he was a professor, and we lived in 6 different places. You have to realize, when he taught, I also got jobs as well.
Absolutely.
But I'm talking about him.
Yeah.
So he was a radical, a real radical, philosophically, politically. He was very smart. He had 3 incredible friends, and they would come here and they would have philosophical conversations. It was really something else. And so he found this place, and he thought he would be here by himself because he just loved it. But then the family came and loved it. And
it was his haven, but the family also began to love it.
And then my son, who is a professor of constitutional law, lives here too. And my daughter, who's an artist, lives here too. And her husband is a professor of, what does Paul teach?
Film.
Film. He's a film professor.
Okay.
So the family is here, which is really very lucky.
And what about your other daughter?
But my daughter, she has gotten 2 Emmys, and she's very progressive. Screen Actors Union, which is a powerful, powerful union.
And this is Camryn.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you think that your life influenced your children and influenced
I
Camryn to...
I have, very much so.
Yes.
Because we went on marches together, we talked about labor unions, we talked about socialism when they were little. And their father, my husband, was very involved with that also. So that's how they grew up.
And I heard
They went on marches with me.
Yeah, I heard a funny story that Camryn was relating, perhaps when you got an award at one point, where she said she called you and told you she was in jail.
And I said, you stick to it, I'm not getting you out. She wanted to know if I would get her out. I said, no way.
Yes.
You stay there.
You're right, and you were celebrating her being in jail, which is not the normal thing that you hear parents say to their children. But I don't think that the jail experience is new for you either. And most 98-year-olds wouldn't be able to, almost 98-year-olds, wouldn't be talking about the times they've gone to jail. But, this is part of your experience.
The big time I went to jail was when a policeman called me a nigger-loving communist prostitute. So I slapped him, and they cited me for police harassment, and they put me in jail overnight.
Wow.
That was really good. And the guards really clapped. Good for you.
That's called speaking truth to power, right?
Yes, that's
But it takes a certain
amazing.
kind of gumption to be willing to do that. Not very many people would do it.
I wasn't afraid.
Right.
I was not afraid at all.
Oh, and have you been in jail more than once?
Well, with my family.
Yeah.
protesting against the war, but not all. A whole group of us were excited. you know.
Yes, yes. But this was just a regular experience for you because you're not afraid to speak for what you believe in.
And when you're arrested with 50 other people, no big deal.
Yeah. So it doesn't feel quite as crazy as it might otherwise.
No, you feel part of a group. And that's how things change. If you're not afraid, if you're afraid, nothing changes. You have to be brave.
Well, and when people, I think there are a lot of people that want to be brave and they want to make a change and make a difference, but they are afraid.
Then you do it in the voting booth.
Now there's another piece of wisdom, that if you're afraid to go out and
Do it in the voting booth.
that there's always the mechanism of being able to vote your opinion. Absolutely. Yeah, what another secret. I don't know that it should be a secret, but but sometimes I feel like it is. And so people have a voice, and when you vote, you are using your voice.
Or the people who don't vote.
Yes, well, and I think that's another piece of this.
He's absolutely correct. Because if you don't vote, you have a voice also
Yes.
by not voting.
Absolutely, you're giving your voice away. I've heard you speak repeatedly about the value of community and the value of who you are around and how you surround yourself with people who believe in the same things as you. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on community and the importance of
Well, I
that?
think community is a very important thing. I think when you get older, as an older adult, you need more of a community than you do as a younger person. Because when you're a younger person, you're able to go out and you're able to involve yourself in many more things. When you're older, it's much more difficult to get out. So a community of like-minded people is really important. That's why many older people move into these communities of what do you call old age homes.
Retirement communities.
Yep,
Yeah,
retirement communities, assisted living.
places, yeah. Because people need people, and people who live by themselves, who are isolated, I question that. I don't think it's a healthy situation. I think people need somebody around them to communicate, to share, to cook, to eat, to cry, to laugh. You need somebody with you.
Oh, that is so important and so personally moving. Yes.
So I live in a community here. It's a community.
Yes, tell us about that.
Well, because of who I am, I will knock on somebody's door. And I'll say, could I visit? You have some time. I do that.
So you don't live in assisted living, but it's almost like you've created a community
Well, the
from the
community is
existing
here.
houses. Yes.
And many people are not like me. That will knock on somebody's door and say, do you have time for me to come in for 10 minutes to say hello? I do that.
And do you ever get rejected?
Yes, and it's fine.
But I think one of the things that's really important is, like you just said, if somebody rejects you, you don't take it personally.
No,
You just
not
move
at all.
on to the next one, where some people take it
No,
personally.
I never take
and
it
then they won't do it again.
All right. So
No, I have
another
a bench. See
secret.
what I do wherever I live? I have a bench in front of my house. And that bench is an inviting bench. Sit down. People will be walking on the shore. I said, come, sit down for a minute.
So another secret. Wherever you live, find or make or install or invent a bench, real or otherwise,
Well, it's always real.
and invite.
Have a seat.
Yeah.
Why are you in such a hurry?
So another secret might be helping people slow down a bit.
Everybody's in a rush. Everybody.
And what do you think the dangers of are? Go, 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 productivity, do this, do that. Some people
I
say
don't
that's
think
a
it's
good
that
thing.
productive.
Yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with productivity.
What do you think it has to do
They
with?
just have to rush. They have to accomplish so much. I don't know why.
And what are they missing? Why is that a bad thing?
It's the difference between doing and being, right?
Yeah.
Our society has become infatuated with doing. That's
You've
this
got
idea
to
of
accomplish and
productivity.
accomplish and do and accomplish.
Right, but we forget about being, and being is so important.
Biggest loss was my husband.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, all I can say, it was a big loss because he was a big part of my life. I met him when I was a young woman. We were married 65 years when he died. 65 years is a long time.
So how do you persevere? How do you continue on when he isn't this beautiful presence in the same way in
It
your
was
life?
hard.
Yeah.
It's hard, not easy. Been a long time now. How long has Jerry died?
A little more than 10 years now.
12 years.
And you've lost some friends too, right? I mean, quite a few friends. You know, when you get older, you lose people.
Yeah, he was funny, very funny.
Yes.
Very good sense of humor, and very smart, very, very smart.
Well, and I hear people as they age, and most people don't get to your age, but as they age, they're losing friends, they're losing family, they're...
I am, I do. I lost a brother who I loved
Yes.
a lot. I lost my very best friend, Lynn Perlman, my very best friend.
Yes. And yet you continue on.
Well, it's far better to continue than not to continue. That's a silly question.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't continue on in a way where they wake up in the morning and look for the next happiness or adventure or gratefulness.
Yeah, I was going to say gratitude.
Yes, yes. And I
think
feel
Sylvia
like...
and I have talked about that a lot, having gratitude for so much.
Oh, I'm so grateful. Look where I live. How could I not be grateful? Look where I live in California. From nothing, look what I have. We were poor when we were young, really poor.
Yes. So there's a gratitude component that nurtures you.
I just feel lucky.
So it's almost like a practice that you don't intentionally cultivate, but it's just there within you.
But you appreciate it.
I do, I appreciate it.
Yes, that this deep appreciation is a piece of the
I
experience.
take people who have no place to live with me. I don't charge them rent. I don't do that.
And so continuing to give again, and not just focusing on the people who are gone, of course, remembering them and appreciating them, but again, focusing on the people who are alive, who need you, who are here to relate to every single day.
So that helping people in a variety of different ways is also, you know, it's not anything unusual, but it's kind of a secret because it facilitates relationships in ways that many people don't do.
Yes.
Going that extra mile just to help people a little bit.
Yes, always giving without the expectation that they're going to be giving back. Yeah.
My friend Saul Gordon, who's the one who introduced us, used to call it mitzvah therapy. Can you see if you could describe what mitzvah therapy is?
A mitzvah is doing something wonderful to somebody else without asking for anything back. It's a mitzvah. No money, nothing. So it's called mitzvah therapy. So how many people do a mitzvah without wanting something back? A mitzvah is you do it because it's a good thing to do, right?
And this is part of your life.
It's a good thing to do. It's good to be a good neighbor. It's wonderful to be a good friend. It's good to make contributions to the world financially and otherwise.
And really that's what the whole idea of elder care advocacy is, because so many older people don't have the family that you have, so they need somebody who could help them. And so what I would do is I would get to know them and hopefully get to know their family. But a lot of times their adult children either aren't around or 3,000 miles away, or something has happened in that relationship and the person is navigating by themselves. Maybe they had a fall and they're getting out of rehab, or maybe, like Sylvia mentioned, they're living in assisted living. They don't have somebody to come and visit them on a
That's
regular
terrible.
basis.
That's terrible.
I know you told me you have that elderly woman friend in Long Beach. Is she still there that you go and visit? Because she said her family very rarely comes to see.
Right.
Yes.
So if an elder care advocate could not only help you socially, you know, be a companion or come and visit, but they help with things like insurance. Somebody has questions about insurance. They need a new primary care doctor to help them. I mean, our healthcare system is so confusing to people.
So complicated to even know which professional and how to access them and how to use your insurance appropriately. You know, I really love this idea of there being a whole profession of elder care advocates. And I wonder, do you have any ideas on how people can access them wherever they are in the country? Are there resources available to find someone like that?
Yeah, I work through a group that's based in Seattle, and they're part of a national network. And if people would contact you or contact me, I could put them in touch with them.
Yeah, I can put it in the description below the video
Yeah,
so people can
sure.
find it and look it up.
I think it's a kind of a nascent field. It's just starting up now, but people are realizing more and more how important it is.
Yeah.
Tom Brokaw has written quite a bit about it because he, has been quite ill for the last 10 years.
Tom Brokaw?
Yeah.
I used to love to listen to him.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's been ill, and every time he goes to the hospital, he has a daughter that's a doctor, and he still says he needs an advocate because he recognizes that without that, he would have a hard time navigating his way through the hospital system.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and even myself, I've been in healthcare for 40 years, and I was in the hospital recently, and it's really, really hard to try and figure out, when to push back on the doctors and nurses and when to go along with what their recommendations are. You got to ask a lot of questions. You got to make sure you understand all the medication that you're taking, and the elder care advocates are really important. So I hope that we'll all be, supporting the growth of this field. And
I hope so too.
Yeah.
I think it's a very important field, very important field.
And in this vein of giving, I work with a lot of caregivers, and they might be family caregivers, they might be paid caregivers, but people who are providing either information and support and resources or hands-on care to others. Do you have any words of wisdom for them?
I think what are the most important things about a caregiver to a client or a patient is to validate that patient. Validation is so important, to say, you look beautiful today. I really like working for you. You're a gentle, kind person. Just words. I really believe that.
Absolutely. That the caregiver relationship and relating in a way that's genuine and validating really does a lot for people as they age.
But there's more than that. That employee should do something a little special, a touch. You really look nice. I'm so glad I'm with you.
Well, and I feel you're revealing another secret here, is that knowing what you need and asking for it overtly.
Yeah,
That touch,
like a validation.
That validation,
is
that
so
touch.
important.
Yes.
And listening. I think you said that
And
before, listening
Yes.
to the person.
And if you didn't say it out loud, some people may even be hesitant to say too much or to be inappropriate or, just not respect
never
boundaries.
inappropriate. It is never inappropriate to say something nice.
Yes.
Ever.
And how about, a lot of the caregivers that I know, and I was a nursing assistant in high school, and it's a hard work. It is demanding, it is hard, they aren't necessarily paid very much. It's, they might work for an organization and the organization gets more money, but they don't get that much money. And so a lot of times people are so exhausted and burnt out and, just fried that they lose the resources.
They don't even want to do it because they need to make a living.
Yes. But still, they're working with people, real people who need them. Do you have any ideas on how they can work with that or balance that?
You need to know the individual. You need to know the person.
Really? So getting to know people at an individual level, and that might be getting to know the older person that you're taking care of, and also the older person getting to know them. And that might be part of the secret sauce that you're talking about, really building the relationship to make that meaningful and less like work, less demand, and more relating and caring for one another. As a child, did you feel like, looking ahead, if we look back, you did so much. You've impacted people in such amazing ways, and you were now almost 98 years old, living this amazing, vital life. Did you feel special as a child? Did you feel like you were going to change the world and you were going to be somebody different and you were going to impact the world? Like, was that in your vision? How did you see yourself as a child?
Well, I was part of a whole group because I was part of a group of women, girls. Yetta, Rosalind, they were my friends. Yeah. And we all, on May Day, we marched together. We would play at that time, we would cut paper dolls and work on paper dolls. I had Even though my parents are poor, I had a wonderful childhood with good friends and meaning in my life because I was going to make it a better world. I just felt that I was going to do it. And I had a brother who was also going to make it a better world. And we felt that we were part of it. We went on marches together. We joined clubs. It was different. I lived a different life than most kids my age.
Yes. And so it wasn't so much that you thought, I'm special, I'm good, but you were part of something you believed in and you wanted to join with people and make a difference.
There were 3,000 people living in these houses. We went on marches together. We had club rooms, we had dances, we had a chorus. Have you heard of a man called Paul Robeson?
Yes. Oh, an amazing activist and actor and singer.
I was in his chorus when I was young.
Yeah, so almost I'm getting this message of find your tribe. Find the people that you connect with and identify with.
That is so important.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what made me who I am today. A very progressive person. And I made that with my children.
So
they're
parents,
all progressive.
Yes, parents can do so much to shape an environment that truly impacts their children.
Without a doubt. Yeah. They're kind, they're good, they contribute to the world.
Yes. And how about as people age? You know, I talk to and interact with so many people in their 50s and 60s and 70s who feel like they've lived a life without enough meaning, that they haven't made a difference. Is it too late for them?
Never. You can make a difference with your neighbor. You can make a really good difference with a child, with a mailman. You can make a difference with one person.
Yes. And here's the secret sauce again. Yes, it doesn't have to be 25,000 people examining their bodies for breast cancer.
Not at all, not at all.
But the individual level starting there.
Big secret is to get involved and have one good friend, because you need one good friend. You need to cry with that friend, you need to laugh with that friend. One good friend, just to be able to share your feelings.
Yeah.
It's important to do that, really important. Your happiness, your loneliness, what you regret.
Yes.
I say that with tears in my eyes.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean it. The big secret is that you have to like yourself. You have to like who you are.
And for people who don't, people who struggle with that, what can they do?
They need to get some help.
Mindful self-compassion is a new practice that's been researched in the last 15 years. And it's this idea of giving time and nurturance to yourself.
Yes.
You know, it's like they say when you get on the airplane,
yes.
You know, the flight attendant says you have to take the oxygen first before you can help your child. So when I'm working with my clients, a lot of times I tell them, are you taking care of yourself? Or do you think about self-care, what it is you're doing? So often they say, I don't have time for that, I'm too busy.
Yes.
And that just makes me feel sad, because without that, it's very hard to give back, right?
Oh, that is beautiful. Dr. Kristen Neff, I don't know if you're familiar with her work, but she has wonderful work and a website that I'll put in the link in the video for people to be able to experience, because there's exercises there. There's tiny little things that people can do. Coming back to your idea of how do you connect with yourself in that way?
I always thank my mailman. I say, thank you so much. Your job is so difficult. I so appreciate your coming. And he gives me a hug.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That is beautiful.
So I was just going to add the one last thing about circling back on community, right?
Please, yes.
So, our nuclear families have been spread out all over. I mean, I grew up on the East Coast and I'm living here. I have very little family here. So I think it's really important, as Sylvia said, to create community, but also to have communities that are available to people, like the senior center, right? And they do things like exercise programs there. They do conversations on things like loneliness,
That's
meditation,
important.
all these kinds of things. So in some ways, the senior centers are the anchor for people at our age to be active in community. Last week, my dear friend Sylvia here came in the middle of a hot day, and she visited. We had a block party on the block in Portland, and several hundred people came, and they had music, and they had some of the local nonprofits there. And it was just really wonderful to see.
It was wonderful.
Yes, and don't they have a new name, a new kind
Right,
of
the
mission
Community
statement?
for Positive Aging. Right, it
Community
used to
for
be the
Positive
Hollywood
Aging.
Senior Center. Now they're calling it the Community for Positive Aging.
Isn't that wonderful for you as well?
It's so important for people to have that as a resource.
So how did you like this interview?
I think you are a wealth of knowledge and experience and direction for people. And there's so many people who are aimless, who don't have that, who didn't grow up with that community experience and that sense of purpose and drive. And I really want them to see how it's played out for you, because you are vital and beautiful and thriving despite losses and sadnesses and
my
challenges
eyesight.
along the way. Exactly. I mean, your life isn't perfect.
No.
You know, you've had
Nobody's
physical
life is
problems.
perfect.
Yeah, so the fact that you are willing to share your experiences and inspire people along the way is just so wonderful and so
Thank you, Larry,
appreciative.
for bringing her.
Thank you, my dear Sylvia.
Yes.